Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. During his trip across Europe this week, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney sought to advance his country's ties on multiple fronts, signing a new strategic partnership with Poland, deepening defense and energy talks with Germany, and reaffirming NATO commitments in Latvia. Now, to talk about what this means for Canadian-European trade and investment, we're joined by Michael K. Dembek, Business Development Manager at the Polish Investment and Trade Agency. Thanks so much for joining us here on TVP World.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let's start out with this tour, this Europe tour. It's Carney's fourth trip to Europe in just about 5 months. That's a lot. Looking at the position of Canada now in all this, has he achieved what he set out to do? How do you rate this trip of the Prime Minister?
Well, I think from a diplomatic standpoint, I think the Canadians are very happy. I think they had all the elements that they wanted for a trip like this. I think there's one small element that's perhaps missing from this whole trip. However, I think I'd give it an A from the Canadian side.
All right, an A from the Canadian side. And what about Europe's gain in all this? I mean, you started with that surprise in Ukraine, then jumped in Poland, his first official trip to Poland. So what does it mean for also Poland and the wider Central and Eastern European region?
Well, for Poland, it was a great meeting to have one of our closest allies, Canada, come and visit. I think it's also significant to note, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe this was the first official leader visiting the newly elected president of Poland. So I think that's significant. I think Canadians came at the right time. We have to remember that trade is not just about goods, but it's actually also about building trust between nations. And Mark Carney's visit in Poland is significant in that regard, especially since this year we've had so many deals happen between Canada and Poland. In January, there was a security nuclear deal signed. In April, you had a nuclear delegation from Poland. The CEO of Orlen and the Minister of Industry came out to Canada to see the SMRs. And then recently, Poland recently purchased Airbus 220, which are mainly produced in Quebec with components built in Poland as well, which just shows that great bilateral trade. So I think Poland has gained a lot from the trip, as well as Canada.
Let's dive into that a little bit more as well. I mean, one key element is also energy. I mean, you mentioned the SMRs. Tell us a bit more about what Canada and also where he visited, not just Poland, but also Germany and wider European Union. What can it gain from that relationship on the energy front?
Well, I'll be frank, and I'm actually quite excited. From my understanding, that Mark Carney has signaled that the Canadians will be investing in energy infrastructure, with potential infrastructure going to the Port of Montreal and the Port of Winston Churchill in Manitoba, signifying that LNG may be exported out to Europe. That's a huge boost for energy in Europe, but also in defense of Europe, in security sense. You may remember that a couple of years ago when Europe was asking and frankly begging Canada to sell us LNG, the former Prime Minister just introduced that there was no business case. However, we can see Mark Carney today has changed tunes, and it looks like Europe may be getting LNG in some time in the future. So I'm very happy to hear that, and I think Europe's going to benefit tremendously in that regard if Canada does pull through with that promise.
All right, and with that as well, I mean, this is an interesting point here. I mentioned Europe as well. There is that major trade deal, the CETA, which was signed 9 years ago, but still, as far as I've done the math here, 10 EU member states out of 27 have still not ratified it. So there is this, at the same time, good energy, pardon the pun, but if we look at the actual documentation, it's a bit stuck here. So how do we square that one?
Well, Germany has ratified it, so has Latvia, so that's good on the Canadian front. However, Poland hasn't ratified it to this day. And I think that's why I said that the triple I gave it an A rating instead of an A+. I think the Canadians really wanted to see Poland commit to ratifying CETA. However, Poland has its reasons why it hasn't yet. And so I think that's something that Canadians will be definitely lobbying for to get that done, especially now when Canada is in amongst a trade war with the United States. They're looking for any win they can get, and this would be significant for Canada's sake. So it's important, but at this point in time, I think Poland at this time has just said they're going to explore the opportunity of ratifying it, but not yet committing to.
You mentioned also there what's important, critical minerals, rare earths. This is something, I mean, Canada has something around of 200 mines. I mean, this is going to matter very much for the European Union. We're looking at everything from defense to green energy. So looking at that, tell us a bit more about what we can expect of that impact and Canada pivoting more towards the European Union in that.
Well, we can already see it now. There's significant investments from Canadian mining companies in Poland and Germany, so it already exists today. However, Mark Carney, with the Chancellor of Germany, recently signed an MOU saying that they're going to explore more opportunities in the mining field. So that's great to hear, but we have to remember it's an MOU. It's not legal or binding. It's something that they promised to work on, and hopefully they'll keep their promise and work on that deal. It would be significant for Europe and Canada.
What about this? I mean, if we're looking at the tariffs are still a factor from the United States. It's mercurial to say the least. I mean, Canada is still a key partner for the United States. It's right next door. So how much does this change? I mean, Canada now looking more of a partnership for the European Union, Poland, etc. But what if that dynamic changes once again in the United States? Would that sort of offset this new direction of the Canadians and the Europeans?
I don't think it will. I think Canadians do want to see an alternative place to trade with. We have to remember that 77% of exports do go to the United States. So Canada has been hit quite hard with what's happening with Donald Trump. And Mark Carney's commitment to exploring new markets is a positive thing for Canadians. Frankly, I think when we look at the situation right now and the decision of Mark Carney's trip, I think he planned it quite strategically, because the day before he left, he did announce that the Canadians will be pulling from their tariffs that they imposed on the United States, trying to build some type of a communication line between the United States and Canada to secure a trade deal. We have to remember that Canada's kind of in a tough pickle at this point, because recently the United States and Europe signed a deal. And I think the United States kind of lit a fire under Canada. And they need to get something done. So I think Mark Carney's trip to Europe is showing that they're committed to working with other markets. They're going to explore their markets, but at the same time, they're trying to build a trade deal with the United States, which is proven to be quite difficult.
I know we spoke a bit about energy and LNG, but give us a little bit on your take. What other sectors can now benefit if Canada now moves closer, not just to the Central and Eastern European region, but Europe as a whole? Give us a couple of business areas where you see the most potential growth in the next few months.
Well, definitely energy. Probably on the nuclear front will probably be the easiest for Canadians to go through. Poland's seems quite committed to getting SMRs up and running, so they're definitely going to benefit from Canada's partnership. Defense is going to be huge and big right now for the Canadian side. We already have a significant amount of Canadian companies in Europe, specifically in Poland, for the hopes of rebuilding Ukraine. So I think defense is going to be massive from the Canadian side. Aerospace, which is already the largest bilateral trade between Poland and Canada, that's going to be big, not only just for Poland, but Canada as well. And I think the beginning of the trip with Mark Carney chose to come to Ukraine, especially on a specific day, which is the Independence Day of Ukraine. And I think Canada is showing that, hey, we Canadians, we want to be committed to Ukraine. We're strategically partnering ourselves with Ukraine. And Mark Carney did announce that he sees that potentially that they may send Canadian troops for a peacekeeping mission once the war is over with Ukraine. And this is quite significant because Mark Carney wasn't invited to the chats by Donald Trump. European leaders were, and Mark Carney wasn't. So Mark Carney doing that move is key, but also setting them up for not only defense, but construction rebuilding of Ukraine, energy. So this is a great move on Canada's part. So I think it's a big win for Canada.
And as you said, on many different fronts, from defense to energy, business opportunities, and a closer partnership for Canada and the European Union as a whole. Look, thanks for all that information, really insightful. Thanks to Vancouver. That was Michael K. Dembek from the Polish Investment Trade Agency. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us. That concludes World Talks, but there's much more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away. Goodbye.